nutrition and discussing safety concerns. So we're going to spend the majority of our time together in this module talking about the spiritual applications related to the aging. What we need to remember is that everybody's spiritual backgrounds, spiritual beliefs are going to be different. So we have to be very sensitive to that. In your book on page 79, box 6.5, it gives us some good points to remember as we think about what's going to be important for our clients related to spirituality. So a lot of it comes down to communication and relationship. We've got to develop those relationships with our patients so that we can better assist them and so we can better serve them when it comes to their spiritual beliefs. So we need to know what it is that's important to them. We can ask them, what brings you joy? What brings you the most meaning out of life? Who do you turn to when you need help? This can give you some really good insight on what you need to do to help them as far as their faith is concerned. You need to explore whether or not they are Christian or whether they're another faith belief, and we are going to treat them the same regardless. So if we have a patient who is Christian and we know they have a strong prayer life, we can definitely offer to pray with them and support them in ways that we are a little more familiar with. If it is a faith tradition that we are not familiar with, then we need to become familiar with it so that we can know better how to take care of our patients. We need to explore prayer and meditation, see if these things are important, or if there are any other religious practices that we need to be incorporating as we help to take care of them. We also need to think about what we can do to help improve that communication and improve the way that we can serve them. So some other things that we need to remember is that we've got to be very present when we're talking to our patients, and this has to be an authentic presence. They have to be able to recognize that we are not in a rush to leave them, but that we're ready to listen to them and help meet their needs. We need to be ready to listen to their life stories. This can give us some really good insight into what is going on with them and what we can do to help support them. We need to encourage family support and presence. Now, sometimes that is not a positive thing, and that's something completely different that we need to address. But in those relationships where it is healthy for the family members to be around, we definitely need to be attentive to that and be ready to assist those relationships as well as they have lots of transitions as the older person begins to age. Also, I think we can fall into the rut of always saying that we'll call the chaplain, and that's important, but the chaplain cannot be everywhere, and not all facilities will have one 24/7. So we need to be very attentive to what our patients' needs are and be ready to proceed. I wanted to give you guys an update on my mother-in-law, since we talked about her in Med-Surg, and since you guys had the discussion board about her this week. And this is a picture of her last week with my kids. She's been moved to a different facility that's a little over an hour away because the facility that she was in, she had declined too much to stay there. She needed more care than they could provide. So this is in her new facility, which seems to be a really nice place. It's just very far for my father-in-law to be able to travel. And she only shuffles her feet. She can just be helped. She can shuffle her feet a little bit when they're helping her transfer from wheelchair to chair or bed or wherever. She's completely incontinent of urine and bowel. She cannot feed herself. My father-in-law goes every day and feeds her lunch. In this, I wanted us to talk a little bit about what this has meant for their spiritual lives. When she was first diagnosed, they had just retired. They had a lot of big plans for themselves in retirement, including traveling and going to do and see things. So this completely changed what their retirement looked like. Also, what happened is they have always been really connected to a church family, but none of their friends were in the same situation. So when she was diagnosed, Wayne felt very alone. Because none of their friends were experiencing the same thing. When he would go to events, he would have to go by himself, and that was just strange. He definitely felt out of place without having her by his side. And so his friends really didn't understand, and he kind of pulled away from a lot of those relationships. And it's made it really hard for him as far as even going to church, because church is another 20 minutes past where the facility is. So for him to go to church and come see her at lunch and make sure things are taken care of, it just really put a strain on all of the relationships he has spiritually. And we're going to talk in a few minutes about what it means for Christians to suffer, but we need to be sensitive about all faith traditions and what something like this would mean for a family going through seeing their loved one whose mind just continues to deteriorate. It has caused a great impact on their spiritual lives. I think he's definitely come to realize more that God is by his side and loves him and wants the best for him. But it's hard. It's really hard. Wayne has been able to build a close relationship with some other spouses. After Cece had been in the facility for a couple of years, he found some other spouses who also had their loved ones in the facility, and they have really developed a close relationship, and that's been a great deal of support for him in these last few years. So you guys are going to have to let me get preachy for a minute. I want us to talk for a few minutes about what it means for a Christian to suffer. What are we promised about suffering? We live in a fallen world. We live in a world that is broken, and that's only going to be remedied by Jesus coming back for us and making us whole when we are taken to heaven and when this world ends. That's the only thing that will remedy it. We are promised we will have trouble. John 16:33, I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. We are going to have trouble in this world. We are not promised that we are going to live lives free of trouble. We are promised exactly the opposite. If we are following Jesus wholeheartedly, Satan is going to recognize that, and he's going to attack us. If we are doing what is in the middle of God's will, Satan recognizes that. And nothing happens in our lives that is outside of God's will, but just because we live in a broken world, bad things happen. What we are promised is that God will always be by our side. He is never going to leave us or forsake us. Joshua 1:9, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua 1:9. The Israelites were getting ready to head into battle. They were going to lose men, and they were told that God was going to be by their side. And the same is definitely true for us. Psalm 86:15, but you, O Lord, are a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. We are promised he will not leave our sides. He will be with us. Psalm 57:1, have mercy on me, my God, have mercy on me, for in you I take refuge. I will take refuge in the shadow of your wings until the disaster is past. Disaster is going to come, but we're promised that he's not going to leave us. He's always going to be by our side. I want to read the 23rd Psalm to you, and I encourage you to read along with me as I read it out loud. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We are promised he will always, always be with us, regardless of what's happening. Paul is one of the great encouragers in the New Testament, and most of his writings were written from jail. He was put in prison because he was choosing to follow Jesus and was choosing to proclaim his message to the world. And so he was imprisoned. And what did he do while he was in prison? He decided to write and encourage the churches and encourage others. There's a lot that we can learn from that for sure. This is a link to a testimony that some friends of ours gave. They lost his parents and their youngest daughter in a car wreck a month ago. And this is a really powerful testimony of how God is working in their lives. This is a link to a Facebook page, so if you have to friend me on Facebook to be able to see it, for sure go ahead and do that. I really encourage you to watch it. Very powerful.